Welcome to another episode of the Hope Strategy Podcast. I am Corey Blake here with Josh Steimley. What's up, Josh?
Doing fine on this beautiful day.
We had a really great conversation today with Emma Jade Ahlstrom. She kind of goes, I think mainly goes by Emma Jade. I was going to ask her and I forgot. Her full name is Emma Jade Ahlstrom. I know her Instagram handle and stuff. She mainly goes by Emma Jade. And if you look her up on YouTube and stuff, it's all under Emma Jade. But man, what a great conversation. I love talking to these people who have just such unique insights based off of their life experience and expertise.
And it's fun to talk to somebody in the news industry who is so positive and hopeful, because that's not what you normally get when you're paying attention to people in the news industry.
Yeah, at all. So Emma Jade is a 7-time Emmy award-winning news anchor with over a decade in the industry. From the Olympics, which she covered 4 of, to the Today Show, Emma finally found her happy place at home with 3, soon to be 4 kids who inspired her to create MOMCAST, a daily newscast for busy moms. I think that's kind of the story here, right? Foundationally is the fact that Emma went from being at the top of her game as the lead anchor on a news show, which she had worked up to for so long. And we talk about that journey that she took to get there, to having children and raising a family and realizing that not based on any societal pressure, as we talked about and stuff, but really just her having to really be introspective and talk to her husband and think about this. She decided that it was best for her to put her career on pause at a point when most people would say that's absolute lunacy to do that, but to put her career on pause and be a full-time mom. And just hearing that overall story arc from her childhood all the way to, kind of those climactic moments of her career and now as a mom was fascinating.
And then she's turned it to her advantage. She hasn't dropped out of broadcasting because of the MOMCAST thing. So it's interesting. She might have thought that she was giving something up that was a big part of her life, that broadcast stuff. And yet she found a way to make it work and still do what she really wants to do as a mom. Yeah.
One door closes, another one opens. And the MOMCAST is on Instagram, her Instagram handle, which we talk about towards the end, but it's Emma Jade TV. And the whole reason I found out about her was because my wife listens to that. That's her news source. And it's an Instagram channel that she follows. And so anyways, it was so cool. What a great example of hard work and sacrifice and kind of grinding it out early in a career in order to reap the rewards later. And what a cool story. So anyways, another great conversation. Happy that we had it. Looking forward to everybody listening to it. Please enjoy this episode with Emma Jade Ahlstrom.
Something is happening in our world.
Time is very precious.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
Hope in the face of difficulty.
More than machinery, we need humanity.
Hope in the face of uncertainty.
I'm better now than I was. I'm experienced now.
Changing the world can happen anywhere, and anyone can do it.
The audacity of hope.
This is the Hope Strategy Podcast with Corey Blake and Josh Steimley. So Bridget actually came to me and I've heard your voice so many times, like from around the house. And she's mentioned you multiple times. And so I was talking to her and she was like, you need to get Emma Jade that does the MOMCAST on Instagram. You need to get her on the podcast. And anyway, so she's like, she's related to Melissa. So reach out. So I reached out to Melissa and she's,
it's awesome. Love it. I love it. I'm super excited. And your wife is the best for listening to MOMCAST.
Yeah. She is the best for that reason and so many others.
Right. But mainly that reason. I'm sure that's what attracted you in the first place.
We're to interview the professional interviewer. This is going to be awesome. We've watched you interview a lot of people way cooler than us. You have such a great story. I think the story arc here is one that we're really interested in. So I'm excited to that because you built up what many people work forever to build up. And you kind of got to this place in a career where you were on the Today Show and you were in network broadcasting and you were doing, I'm guessing, and we'll get into this, but kind of what was a dream for a long time.
Totally.
And then what the world may have said was like the dumbest decision ever, right? You said, no, I'm going to make a big pivot here. And I just had my first kid and I want to have more and I want to be a mom. So and you decided to take a step back from your career. Not completely, again, which we'll talk about, but take a step back and focus on motherhood and building a family. which is amazing. And so that's kind of the preface of this whole thing. And we want to kind of go back in time a little bit and get to know you better and get to understand kind of where you were coming from and how you led up to even that moment to have that decision to make. So that being said, what was it like growing up in San Diego? What was your upbringing like?
The best ever. Sometimes I'm just like, what? My parents ruined me because it doesn't get better than the small town that I'm from. I'm originally from a small, really quiet beach town, Encinitas. It's right near Carlsbad.
Oh, that's my favorite place. That's like my dream home. I love Encinitas.
It was the best. My parents bought our very modest home back, 34 years ago for $130,000. They can now sell it for close to $1 million, and it's not a nice home. I grew up, I am one of 9 kids. So in Encinitas, that's very odd. Everywhere we would go, everyone knew who my maiden name is Brazier. Everyone knew the Brazier clan because, we'd go in this big green van everywhere, and we'd pull up and out would come 9 children and my 2 parents. And it was just this really fabulous group. My mom had 9 kids within 10 years. She cheated with one group because there was twins at the end. So a little bit of a cheat, but we're right after each other. And growing up in that environment was like a sleepover party every single night. It was so much fun. And those people that are my brothers and sisters are still my best friends today. And what makes our relationship so cool is that we're all so different, which I think has made me who I am today. And that's someone who is, fighting every day to not be judgmental of other people's opinions and to accept people, not just for who they are, but for what makes them tick. And it really got me interested in broadcast, which is funny because my whole family, everyone is very artsy and creative and, brilliant. I just am the dork who was like, I like talking to people, so I'm going to do broadcast. But I found so much joy in getting to know others and getting to know their stories and what makes them special and what makes them passionate. And, I've never stopped talking since.
So how old were you when you first had this idea, I'm going to be a broadcaster someday? Were you a kid still or?
No, not at all. When I was a kid, I didn't even think about what I was going to be when I grew up. I just was worried about cheer practice and, where I was going to meet my friends after school. I wasn't interested in news very much even growing up, but I did love public speaking. I just thrived off of that.
So I get an idea of kind of what number were you in 9? Where did you fall?
Number 6, right below the middle.
Okay, so you're towards the bottom. So I'm guessing you probably had a lot of experience as a younger person talking to a lot of people older than you and having an audience.
Totally. And I feel like I didn't want to get lost in the mix. Yeah. So I always just talked a lot.
What public speaking opportunities did you get? You said you love public. Were you in debate?
Yeah.
Or what were you doing?
So my first real thing in public speaking was 6th grade when I ran for student body president. And after that, I was just I want to speak all the time. So I did it in junior high and in high school. I did theater and cheerleading and all that jazz. And I just loved not just speaking in front of crowds, but feeling the crowd and kind of playing off of, the vibe that you would get from the people in front of you. I don't know. It was just so fun to me. And I loved speaking in church and teaching. And it just was one of those moments where when you finish the last piece of a puzzle and that click that you get, that's just what I got from public speaking. I just felt like it was such a fun environment for me where I really felt like not only was I able to speak, but I was able to learn every single time I had opportunities to speak in front of other people. So that's what I really liked the most.
Were you ever nervous? Was there do you remember
totally.
So in 6th grade, were you really terrified to get up on the stage and then?
No, my worst experience was when my brother was heading out on his mission and I thought it would be cool to sing in church. I'm not a singer, but it was an opportunity to be in front of a crowd. And I forgot the words to the song. And I remember being so that moment. I think I'm always reminded of it whenever I go on air or anything, just just don't forget what you're supposed to say. Those nerves though, I love to channel those and use those as a way to convey your message even more passionately than you would if you didn't have nerves.
Do you have any tricks for that? Because I gave a TEDx talk several years ago, and it was the first time I had ever spoken in front of a large audience.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this will be no problem. I've spoken in front of people before in groups and everything. And I walked out on that stage and I realized there are 1,000 people in this audience. And then who knows how many people will see this on YouTube. And my body started doing weird things. Like my legs started shaking and my lips started quivering. And I was like, I was standing there. I was like, what is going on with my body? Like, I feel normal, but it's doing weird things. And I was worried like people could see my lip like quivering on camera. I was just, so how do you deal with those nerves?
You know what? I've learned to embrace those nerves, because the more you think about them during your talk, the worse they get. And then you lose sight of what your talk's even about. And you're more focused on your lip quivering than you are on your message. And so what I have learned, because that still happens to me too, where I have to get up and do something and like I can feel like a knee shake or something like that. And what I've learned is that to harness that feeling that I'm getting in my knee and try and channel it through what I'm trying to portray, or like what I'm trying to say, like the message. Something that has really helped me every time that I public speak is to just focus on what do I want this audience to feel? And I do the same thing when I put together like my newscast. What do I want, like the biggest takeaway? What do I want the moms or the dads or whoever's watching this to really like glean from what I'm trying to say?
So you think about the audience.
I would take that nervous energy that's like in my leg, and I would try and use that to, like, that's energy. That's good. Like if we can spread that energy to the people that are in front of us, then my gosh, that message is going to like just hit home even more. If I can make their legs shake or make their lips quiver, then I'm doing a good job. So you try and not focus on what's happening to your lip or what's happening to your leg, but try and take that energy and channel it in a way that you can push your message out even more. I think nerves are good. I think that feeling is like, it almost reminds me of like when you went on a first date with the guy that you were well, in your case, the woman, whatever it is, that you were super stoked about, you know, and you use that energy to like really connect with that person.
I think that's a great way to put it, especially knowing that public speaking is, I think statistically, I think it's the number one fear that people have. I don't think there's any way of avoiding it, whether you've spoken in front of, I don't know, maybe Obama or something, you know, doesn't get nervous anymore because he's such a great speaker. I don't know, but I agree. I've never thought about that way, but that kind of the energy has to go somewhere. And I love the fact that you're saying, rather than taking this energy and focusing on me and how stressed I am and how brutal this is, I'm going to take that energy and focus on the value that I can provide to the people I'm talking to. And one way or another, that energy and that is getting out, right? We may as well make it a positive thing and leverage it for something great. That's awesome.
Right. Because a lip quiver is awkward to watch on someone else.
What was and we're going to jump ahead a little bit, but I'm just curious, since we're on the topic of public speaking and nerves in your professional career. So we talked about, you know, when you were younger and stuff, but in your professional career, what was the moment that was the most writing on the line or like the highest stress moment? I mean, you've been on live TV a lot. Live TV.
Yes.
Like, for anybody out there like me that has watched the live TV news anchor bloopers online.
Oh my gosh, man. That's like my goal is just to
Are you on any of those?
That.
Okay, you're not on any.
Knock on wood.
Okay.
Knock on wood, because
so you've seen
the fact
those,
that I just said it.
Yeah, some of those are absolutely hysterical. But what's the biggest moment of nerves for you in your professional career when you're on live TV?
I think one of the hardest moments that I had to like really like sequester the people that I was interviewing, I was live at The Voice finale on NBC. And on that day, I was going live all across the country for all different stations. They would say, okay, you're now going to go live in Houston. Now you're going to go live in DC. Now you're going to go live in Phoenix. And I'm in the middle of, you have an earpiece with producers, different producers from all over the country who are telling you, hey, Houston's coming up next in 10 seconds, or, you know, whatever's coming up next in 15 seconds. And I'm sitting there, but you have, you know, people that you're going to interview. And at this time I had Blake Shelton and Carson Daly standing next to me. And at the end of the show, they like to drink.
Yeah. I think I saw this interview. Yeah.
Very rowdy, like extremely rowdy. And we are like seconds away from an interview with Phoenix. And Blake Shelton, who is, you know, 2 times my size, is kissing my cheek over and over and over and over again. And it's not like in a creepy way. Like it was just like he knew he was bugging me. It felt like my older brother was just like trying to bug the crud out of me before we're going live. We're live and he's still kissing my cheek. I'm just like, okay, we're going to do this. And I was so nervous, but at the same time, it helped me to know that I needed to take control in that moment to like get the interview back and like to actually get these guys who were acting like frat brothers. Yes. To respond and give some sort of value to viewers in Phoenix. But it was definitely a high pressure moment when you have someone who is just trying to, who doesn't take your job seriously at all. But it's something I'll never forget. It was so much fun.
It's not anybody. It's a celebrity that everybody knows. Right. And so you've got your ear with the producer saying, and we're ready in 5. And you've got Blake Shelton on this side kissing you on the cheek. Like, dude, what are you doing? I've got a job to do here.
And he knew that he was bugging the crud out of me. And I was just like, are you like, this is ridiculous. But it's moments like that really help you train your brain in a way to focus on what you want the result of this interview to be, or what you want out of this interview, because you don't want to waste people's time. They can easily, change the channel, but what can you give to them that will value or make their life or their brains smarter? So would you say that was tricky.
So would you say that you're by nature an extrovert or an introvert?
I'm extrovert for sure. My husband is here. He'd be laughing that you even asked that. Yeah, an extrovert. Okay, by nature.
That's the vibe I get based on what you're saying. The funny thing with me is that I kind of would say that I'm an introvert in most public situations. I'm usually like, I'm cool being over on the side and whatever, not talking much or just talking to one or two people at a time. But when it goes into like business mode or what I'm trained to do or what I've done for a long time, I can kind of flip this switch where I can become an extrovert, right? And one of the things I used to teach college classes, and I would always tell students in entrepreneurship, like, you need to learn to get in over your head and love it. And that's kind of what you're saying. That's what I'm getting with like the speaking, like you're getting in over your head. You've got this energy. You got Blake Shelton here. You got whatever. You got these difficult moments tend to yield the greatest results and the greatest outcomes. Like those moments that are the highest pressure where you're definitely in over your head. That's interesting to hear from your perspective in that career, right? In broadcasting, because I've seen that so many times.
The growth that comes from those moments. I mean, as uncomfortable as they might be, or as much as they stretch you afterwards, I felt like I could handle anything. I could handle like a pack of dogs coming at me and I could still do a live interview. Like it's moments like that make us the most uncomfortable that have, like you said, the best result. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Did you go to school for broadcasting? So you, as a young person, you kind of talked about what kind of sparked your interest, and that's what you went to school for.
Yeah, it was public speaking that I loved. And so when I saw broadcast on the application for college, I was just like, well, let's try this. Literally went to my first class and it was just game on from there. I finished the program super quick. I took advantage of about 5 or 6 internships while in college. And most of those internships turned out to be job opportunities at the end. And that was one of the biggest things that I took away from college, was to take advantage of as many opportunities as you possibly can while you're in college, because the network that you have available to you at some of these universities is so vast. And to not do those internships, and, the internships were pretty cruddy. I mean, like, some sounded great. One internship that I had was with NBC Sports to go work at Wimbledon, which sounded amazing. They flew me over there. I got to stay with this family over in London, and it was incredible. I mean, like, you'd be in the hallways walking by Rafa Nadal and Roger Federer and Serena Williams. But my job on that internship, which sounded super cool, was literally getting people food and making coffee for 2.5 weeks straight. And it was not what I expected. When I went over there, I was like, maybe Bob Costas will get sick and then I'll have to swoop in and take his job. And, nothing like that. Nothing like that. I was literally taking food orders and I had to make coffee. I never made coffee in my entire life. I didn't even know how to work a coffee machine, but I faked it till I made it. And I smiled my way through that internship every single day. While other interns didn't take it as seriously, I just knew that, okay, this is the job I have to do. I'd literally have to be a, personal chef. And so I did for 2.5 weeks. And that attitude that I had, smiling and showing up and being on time. And even though I wasn't stoked on the job I was doing, I was still there. That internship turned into a job with NBC Sports, where later I got to go to 4 Olympic Games with them, and I won 2 national sports Emmys with them. So it's so funny, those small moments where you think like, man, I should be doing more, or I can do so much more than this. But just having a good attitude led to something at that moment I never thought possible. I never thought possible.
I'm going to make my kids watch this part.
Josh, seriously, it was one of the biggest life-changing things that I learned all through college, those internships, taking them seriously and showing up. Because as interns, I'm sure you guys know, because I'm sure you've had internships, you kind of get this, the dumbest stuff to do. The grunt of the gruntest work goes to the interns. But showing up, smiling, having a good attitude, I had no idea that it was going to turn into what it's turned into, and the opportunities that came from making coffee for 2.5 weeks straight.
Yeah, I think it's the interns, and then it's also the people at the top. Because Corey and I run a business, and when you're describing what interns do, I'm like, that's kind of like what Corey and I do too, running a business. If we get all the worst jobs that nobody else wants to do.
Right. Shoot. Could turn into something. Just keep smiling.
Yeah, the foresight that takes, to be able to see the end and say, what are the benefits that can come long term from this short term garbage job? A lot of times, and you said attitude, right? I think attitude's everything, because a lot of people in that situation are complaining and they're whining and they're upset. And it's you got flown to London to Wimbledon, make all the coffee, do whatever, and meet as many people. And like you said, show up on time, put a smile on your face. What was the transition from that and going to school and then having some of these cool internships? I mean, what was the hiring process like out of school? Did you have offers, it sounded like, because of these internships? And was that a tough decision?
Yeah, thankfully I chose internships that were very specific to what I wanted to do. I think that's also very smart, is that if you're, don't just go on an internship because it sounds fun because it's in London, but no, specifically, I knew I wanted to be somewhat in the sports world. So I thought, okay, NBC Sports is going to be really great. So I chose internships that I really thought could turn my life into something that I wanted to be, that would take it down the right path. Even though I was making coffee, or even though I was making coffees of, endless amounts of scripts, I was around and surrounded by people that I knew I wanted to be surrounded by for the rest of my career. So after college, I had an offer from NBC Sports to go to Beijing and to cover the Olympics. And again, it wasn't a job that I really wanted because it wasn't on air at that point. So I was really just behind the scenes. But I said yes, because I knew I had to do the work. A lot of times we expect that, hey, I've gone to college, I've done internships. Now I should just automatically get the job that I deserve. But I was raised by 2 very humble parents who showed me that doing the work was worth it. And putting yourself in positions where you were not just humble, but teachable would always pay off. And so I said yes to that job, even though, like I said, it was behind the scenes. And after Beijing, I was able to apply to a bunch of different stations all across the country to get my first on-air job. And in our business, in broadcast, typically you go to a very small market to begin with. And that can also be humbling, because I went, from Beijing with NBC Sports, the network, where all eyes were on us, millions of people watching, to a small town in Idaho Falls, local News 8, where I was the weekend anchor and reporter during the week, making $20,000 a year, signed a 2-year contract, and I was doing everything. I mean, again, that juxtaposition from being at the top of the top to now humbling myself enough to be like, okay, if I want to get there, if I want to get to NBC network, I've got to start from the bottom.
Is this kind of the career path for most people? I mean, doing broadcasting in school, do most of them come out and do internships and then start off air? Because you were like a PA or something, right? Coming out of school. And then,
for most, it just depends. A lot of people will jump straight into on air, but I had that opportunity to do the Olympics, and I was like, I can't pass that up. I can't not do that, even though it wasn't what I wanted to do, but I knew that it would get me to meet people and to network. And I mean, who doesn't want to live in the middle of the biggest sporting event for an entire month and a half? It was just the coolest.
had you been to Idaho before? Idaho Falls is pretty small. So you just showed up. Were you married? Were you married at the time or were you single?
Wasn't married. Totally in love with this guy that I like wanted to marry more than anything in the entire world. And so I like secretly chose Idaho because he was still in Utah. So I was like, oh, I can like creepily go visit him every now and again. Yeah. So I chose Idaho, and it is a very small market. And in small markets and news, you literally have to do everything. You're shooting your own stories. You're editing your own stories. You're writing your own stories. You're producing everything. On the weekends that I would anchor, you feel like this big time anchor, but I wrote the entire show from start to finish. And there were 3 shows. So I had to write everything, and it was extremely difficult. However, there's no way I could be the person that I am today within my career without those experiences. And you had to sign a 2-year contract. I was there for 2 years, working my tail off, doing every single job that I could possibly do within my news station. And after that, I somehow, some way got a job from how the markets work in broadcast is that they're graded by numbers. So New York is number 1, and LA is number 2. Idaho Falls is 162. But I had worked so hard and I applied all over the country. And because of the things I was able to do, I was able to jump from 162 to Phoenix, which was market 12. And I've been here ever since.
Sounds like you were very career focused, right? You set goals based off of wanting to get into broadcasting. You saw opportunities and you capitalized on them, knowing that, they would bear fruit eventually. Did you know early on while you were in school? I mean, what was your thought of being a mom or being a wife or, kind of that side of life? Is it something that how did you balance that out in your head, knowing that you were so career driven and career focused? Did you see like down the road, I'm going to have to make some tough decisions, or did you not think that far ahead? I mean, what was that all like as you were studying?
Secretly, I wanted to have to make those tough decisions, but I didn't have that option. Like I was really in love. Thankfully, I can say this because I ended up marrying him a couple years later, but I was really in love with this one guy. And like, I would go on other dates just because I just felt like I needed to, because this one guy wasn't really giving me attention. So might as well just go date other people. But I knew in my brain that if I didn't marry the one man, then I was just going to be a career girl for the rest of my life. And I wondered too, because I get asked this question a lot. It wasn't like I set out to be like, I'm only doing career and I'm never going to get married. I didn't have the option to get married at that time in college or even post-college a couple of years, because I just was so in love with just one person that and they didn't want to marry me.
All your eggs in the one basket.
Yes, that's the kind of person that I am. I mean, I'm pretty lame like that. But man, I just was like, I wish there were times. I remember when I graduated from college and all of my girlfriends were married, every single one. And I did have a little bit of a pity party, like, wow, maybe this isn't going to happen for me. Maybe that's not going to be like in the cards. Maybe I'm not going to do the whole mom thing. Maybe, I'll just do the career stuff. And I took some of that sadness and I think, maybe just subconsciously used that when I moved to Idaho by myself. I mean, again, I came from a family of 9 kids. I didn't have a room by myself. Here I am in Idaho Falls with the whole apartment to myself, unable to sleep at night because I was scared by anything. But I think I used some of that, like being sad that I wasn't married and seeing some of my friends and the things that they were doing, and put that into work, where I was just so dedicated to my job. And I was so obsessed with going as far as I could in my career and learning as much as I could, because honestly, at that point, I didn't have any other option. And I was, trying to be okay with that, Complicated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions about what took so long, but we don't have to necessally jump into that.
No, that's okay. You can
go get your husband on here and let's ask him a few questions.
Bless him, that poor man. I know, we're one of those weird couples that we dated on and off for about 5 years, and then finally things started to align. But without that 5 years of me working and going crazy after my career, things couldn't have aligned the way that they did, and the experiences that I had. And I know that I would have been one of those people, if I did get married in college, that would have always had that what if, like, what if I would have chased it? What if I really would have gone for it? And I wonder if I would have regretted the decisions that I made if things ended up differently.
So what was your career like after, when you got into the Phoenix market, were you an anchor? I know you did the morning show for a long time.
I wish.
What was the arc there of your career once you got to Phoenix?
That was another thing that was tricky, but it was something that I was used to. In Idaho, I felt like I was like so big time, big fish in a small pond. When I went to Phoenix, I had to accept a job that was not, again, what I wanted to do, because I was going from a small market to a huge market, and they didn't have a lot of trust in me that I could produce what I was producing in Idaho on this big of a stage. So I had to start from the bottom again. But I was willing to do it because I knew I had done it before and I could do it again. So I was overnight producing. Overnight producing means that you start at 10 p.m. and you go all the way until 8 a.m. writing a 2-hour show by myself for their weekend morning show. And the anchors would come in, 30 minutes to show, and I'd have, the 2 hours done, and they'd come in and tell me everything I had done wrong, and I'd rewrite really quick. So that's what I was doing when I first moved to Phoenix. And I had to prove to them, hey, I can actually do on-air stuff. And there was one moment that I was out to lunch with my now husband, and there was this sounds horrible, but there was the shooting in the vicinity of where we were. I had just gotten to Phoenix, just barely started my job there. And I called the station and I said, hey, I can report for you from here with what's going on. We're all on lockdown in this restaurant. And I went live over the phone for the next couple of hours, lockdown, in the middle of this crazy, shooting, but then it turned into something else. And it was then that I proved that I can talk on air and I can do the job that you want me to do. It took another couple of months for me to really show them what I had in my, in my arsenal of tricks with doing, on air stuff. And then finally I made it to the morning show, which is where I wanted to be. But again, started at the bottom of the morning show doing traffic and then moved my way up to their main anchor.
I'm sure that gave you a lot of empathy when you were an anchor, when you were a lead anchor for the person that you said the overnight production or whatever that was there for 12 hours the night before writing it out.
There's something to that where you can really not just appreciate the people who are doing the job that make you look good, but to level with them in a way where it's I've been there. I know that the struggle is real in the job that you have, and it's so hard. I think that's made me so much better to understand the process, to really understand it, because I've had to do it. And not just empathy, but also relatability, to really understand where those people are coming from and to convey the messages that they have been producing all night to convey in a way that, I can really level with those writers. And it made me a better anchor writing all of those stories night after night. It really did.
So we want to tap into your expertise now on news as an industry, because this is a very fascinating topic right now. We're in this era of fake news, as it's been dubbed, right? And there's just so much out there. And we're also in this era, and Josh and I are digital marketers. We run a digital marketing agency. So we are very much in the business of creating valuable content that people want to click on and engage with and make decisions off of, right? There's been so much concern and controversy on how this is all handled. What's your take? You've been in news for a while now and you've seen this play out a little bit. What's your take on kind of the way that news is delivered, the business behind news and how it's delivered? And all of that.
Unfortunately, news has evolved quite a bit over the last couple of years, especially since I've been in the industry, where I got into this business because I really thought that it served a purpose. I met people who were just in it to serve their communities and who were doing it because they knew that news was created for the greater good, to inform their communities so that they could make better decisions, whether it came to politics or schools or where they wanted to live or, whether or not they would buy a house. News at its core serves a purpose, and that's to make the community smarter and better. recently in the last couple of years, news has had to evolve because there's just so much competition with, the internet, with people who are able to start their own blogs, with other people finding their news, not just online, but on air. And there's just so many other options now to find news that sometimes the real news that's really there to serve people, gets muddled because there are so many other voices that you can listen to. In my opinion, I think that there are still industries and there are still networks that are in it to serve other people. And that's to inform them and to make them feel like they can make better decisions because they watched the news. I unfortunately have a hard time with trying to just put all of my eggs in one basket. You really have to cast a wide net when it comes to news. You have to read one story on one site and one story on another. And for you, find what you believe to be truth and what you believe to inform you the best. But that's hard. Like it's hard to dedicate that much time.
I think that's what's so maddening to people, right? Is that you can read one headline on NBC and then jump over to ABC and then jump over and the same story is painted in such a different light that you're like, and so it's exhausting trying to get the full scoop and understand it.
It's so exhausting and people don't have time to read a lot of these stories. A lot of times it's just the headline that you're getting, but the headline is created to you to click on it because that means, again, business-wise, more viewers for them, which is what they want in the end. So, and reading headlines is really dangerous because you're really not getting the story. You're getting this much. So it is such an impossible time. And it frustrates me because it takes away from the people who are really in this industry for good. It bums me out. It really does because there's so many people who are in it because they really do want to help their communities.
So Emma, where do you see the future of news going? Because it seems like there's demand for objective, unbiased news. And economics teaches us that where there's demand, somebody will supply it. And yet It feels like the supply of news is just getting more and more biased. And I mean, on both sides, on every side, but it just seems more opinionated, more biased. And it seems like it's hard to find any objective or any halfway objective source out there.
Totally. My hope is that there will be a change of course, that we will go away from the opinions. At my news station that I am currently with, when we interview one candidate, say they're Republican, you have to give that same time to the Democratic candidate. So I hope that we're going to see more of that. That's what has always been the rules. And it's a little upsetting because I feel like that's not being played by on quite a few networks that I watch. I'm hoping that there will be a change of course for that reason exactly that you brought up, because people are dying to just have not opinions, but just give me just the basic facts of what's happening or of what I actually need to know, because all the extra noise it's maddening and it's not helping anyone. It's literally why I created MOMCAST, because I just kept talking to moms like me who didn't have time to sit down and watch an entire newscast because half of it was, either someone's opinion or stuff that they weren't interested in. And so I thought, how can I make this better for people? Because moms, especially right now, need to know what's going on and they need to know what's important and they need to be able to make decisions for their kids and for their families. And there just wasn't, I felt like a safe place for them to go.
And they don't have time to go read 20 stories every day to put it all together.
And if you do, my goodness, like good on you. I mean, I do it at the end of the day because it's like what I love and it's part of my job. But the typical person, I mean, I remember after baby number 3, I was just like, I have been in news my whole life and I'm not even able to sit and watch a full newscast. Like there's a problem with that. We've got to change that. And the best way I found to do it was just on Instagram.
That is a perfect segue from Josh's question of like, how do we innovate here? How do we disrupt a system that's clearly broken and needs some fixing? And that led you to, so your Instagram is Emma Jade TV, right? And
yes. Yep.
So the initial idea was just what you said. I'm not getting, one, I don't have the time. And I know most moms that I talk to don't have the time. My wife, again, we talked about this again, perfect example. Not only does she not have time having 3 small kids and 1 coming soon, she also doesn't have the energy to take in so much information that most of the time is not great information. And she's just like, I don't need that in my life. Right. So again, she stumbled upon your Instagram and was like, oh, this is great. It's 3 or 4 minutes of hearing, multiple stories from multiple sides. I love the way you produce it. That feels like a newscast where you're like starting at the top with this, and this, and now to our top story. And then you kind of have, it's so well done. Was that a decision that you made? Like, did you do a lot of planning on this? Like, I'm going to do this and this is what it's going to look like. This is what it's going to feel like. Or did you just say, I've got an idea. I think it'll solve a problem. I'm just going to start doing it. And how has that evolved over time as you've been working on it?
I mean, it's literally what Josh said, is that I saw that there was, something missing in the market. And I thought I could do this. Like I was a little sad at that point in my life. I just had baby number 3. I was the main anchor of a morning show that I had wanted, like I had fought years to get that spot. And I finally had it. And it was that moment where I had to commit to a decision. I had to commit to either, Emma, you're going to be the full-time working mom, that you're going to have a nanny and you're going to have to see your kids for a couple hours a day, but you're going to be tired, or you're going to stop all that, put a pause on this career and commit to being a mother. And I decided to hit the pause button and commit to being a mom. And I didn't want to feel sad. I didn't want to feel regret. And so I thought, okay, what can I do to keep myself going? Because I know that I can still chase a career, not having to sit at an anchor desk every single day. And on top of that, I know that there are moms who are super interested in news, but they're not getting it. Like they're not able to get it the way that, a typical person can get it, which is by sitting down and watching a newscast. And so I, right after I had baby number 3, I talked to one of my best friends in the industry and came up with this idea of newscasts just for moms, MOMCAST. So every day, I'm more like a news broker. I search all of the news sites and I come up with the 3 stories that I see the most on those sites. And those 3 stories I read, from all different sites to try and get every single angle covered. And I make sure that I add links to every single one of those stories so that if people want more information, they can get it. But I want there to be an option for women, especially, and for moms who don't have time. I want them to be able to go to one space that they know isn't biased, doesn't have an objective, doesn't have an opinion. I'm not even getting paid for this. I'm just doing it because I really think that people need information. And what's a fast way to get it, on their phones? It was a really tough decision to make, going from the height of my career, the best position that I had ever gotten, to, waking up and changing diapers every 4 seconds and running around and my kids being the number one priority. It was hard because right now the world tells you that you can do both and you can do both well, and you should do both because you deserve it and you worked hard. And yeah, that's right for a lot of women. They do deserve it. For me, though, I knew that I couldn't do both well. And I couldn't do both. Like I could totally keep going, but I would just be so stretched, so thin. And what's the point of that? If I'm doing a bunch of things, but not well, then why do it? So making that decision and creating MOMCAST, it has definitely not been perfect. There's been days where I'm like, gosh, this is hard. Like I took on a lot more than I thought I was taking on.
I've watched them. It looks like it's a lot of work. Of work.
It is a lot of work. And again, it's not something that I get paid for. I'm just doing it because I really do believe in it. And that's people need news, especially right now. And what's so funny is I created this back in July of 2019. So a year ago. We weren't even talking about coronavirus. Yeah. We weren't even talking very much about the upcoming election. We weren't talking about racial unrest, and we weren't talking about schools being shut down. Like not even close. And to think of where we are now and how much MOMCAST has been forced to evolve is pretty incredible. And I thought it was important then. But now to see how important it is today, it fires me up every single morning that I put it together, because I know that the information out there, it's so loud. Like, it's so loud. There's so many different voices. There are people who believe the coronavirus is real, people who don't, people who think that you shouldn't trust this person, people who think you should trust this person. I hope that I can be someone who always puts together information that is beneficial to others and isn't for like an ulterior motive, but is literally just like, you can depend on MOMCAST because I'm literally just here for you. Like, I just want to do this so that you feel better and you feel smarter today.
I love the problem solver in you. You can hear it kind of riddled throughout your story. Like, I see problems. I want to create solutions, and I'm willing to put in the work to do it. Cause I did, one of my first thoughts as I was watching this is like, oh, this is like a lot of editing that goes into this. And like, just from the beginning to end and
Mm-hmm.
the whole process, you can tell it's a lot of work. So huge props to you. And I will say from one of your viewers, and now I guess me too, you're making a big difference, and it is having an impact, and it is helping a lot. So I really appreciate it. I have this conversation, I feel like, way too many times right now. I was just last night hanging out with my brother and sister-in-law. We went on a double date, and we were talking politics, unfortunately. And we were just kind of going back and forth. And I think what everybody's hungry for, from what I've gathered in my conversations, is a strategy or a process that they can follow to digest the news in a way that is tolerable and is going to help them make educated decisions. So you've kind of touched on this a little bit, and obviously you created one solution, MOMCAST, to this for moms specifically, or anybody that wants to listen to it, but that's kind of your target. And you have such great insight being on both sides of it, being the one that wrote the stories to being the one that was on scene for stories. So the one that delivered them on a morning news show. And now as a consumer as well, somebody, you said you couldn't even sit through the news for the whole time, right? Like, do you have any tips or advice on how people can go about taking in so much and making educated decisions from that information they're taking in?
The best advice that I can offer is to know your source. If you are reading off of Instagram, or just listening to voices on social media, or going to different blogs, or even just on NBC or on CNN, look at the source of the information. Where did that information come from? I can tell you by working in news that when you were reading it off of a reputable news site, that story has been seen by multiple professional eyes, whether that's producer to reporter to director to whatever it is. It's gone through a process to get to your screen or to get to your phone. Now, for a blog or for someone on Instagram, a lot of times you're just getting an opinion, or you're just getting that person's perspective. Right now, sources are the most important thing when it comes to news and who you're going to trust. Because if you know the source of the information and where it's truly coming from and the reason behind it, then it's easier to trust, and it makes more sense for you to invest your own thoughts and invest your own ideas into whatever the point of that story is. But if you're investing in just people that you like on Instagram or people that you hear on social media, then I think you run into a little bit more trouble and a little bit more confusion. So if you can just find sources that speak to you, that make sense to you, that are digestible to you, in my opinion, is the best thing. And you know what? You have to work for it. At this time right now, like, we just want everything now, and we want everything to make sense to us right now. We deserve it. But that's just not how it works right now. Unfortunately, with news, like, you really need to invest some time, look at reputable news sites, whether that's NBC, ABC, CNN, NPR, Associated Press, Washington Post, New York Times. Look at the ones that you think, makes the most sense to you, and which ones kind of line up with your way of thinking, and depend on those sources. In my opinion, I like to look at everything, and I might be a little bit different. I don't find it helpful to develop very strong, passionate opinions on things that don't truly affect me. Because what is that really doing? At the end of the day, how does the story affect me, my husband, and my kids? Like, are we all okay? Are we all really healthy? Are we all super, like, everyone's dressed, everyone has food, everyone's happy and loved? Like, that's it. How much does this fight between two politicians affect me? How much does, what's happening on one side of the globe affect me? If it's not very much, then great, read about it. But to develop a super strong, passionate opinion on something that isn't really going to get you anywhere, to me, just seems like a waste of time.
So when people tell me that this election is the most important election of my lifetime, and if the wrong person gets elected, we're all going to die, would you say that's perhaps a biased opinion?
I would say that is a silly opinion. And I think at the end of the day, if you are happy with the information that you've gleaned from one candidate over another, then the best thing that you can do is form an opinion that is important to you, but in the same breath, you took time to form that opinion. Other people are going to form different opinions. If we can all be respectful of those different opinions, I think we will just be so much happier.
And that's okay that somebody else has a different opinion. That's what it's supposed to, that's how it's supposed to be, right?
That's how they work, for goodness sakes. And if in a time when we are all hearing how important it is that we accept people who are different and that we love each other. Like we have to apply that, unfortunately, to politics, which sounds horrible, and sounds almost impossible sometimes. But like, listen, we got to accept that we're different. And thankfully we live in a country where that's okay. But we have to remember that should be fine in opinions as well. We all come from different backgrounds. We have different experiences that have shaped us. Some you think are right, some you think are wrong, but are you really going to get fired up over someone else's opinion? Like, what's the point of that?
Definitely.
Oh, it's fun. Entertainment, right?
Unfortunately, it's become entertainment. And I just think that we should go back to Blake Shelton doing kissing you on a red carpet instead. Can we make that entertainment?
So, Emma, earlier when you got pregnant with your first child, you had this decision to make. Do I stay and dedicate myself to work and get a nanny or whatever, make arrangements? Do I be a full-time mom? And a lot of people have brought up how, well, why don't men ask themselves this question? How come when their wife gets pregnant, the man doesn't say, well, gee, I have a decision to make. Do I stay at work or do I go home and take care of my child? Yeah. And it seems like our society has defaulted to this idea of this is a question for the woman to ask. It's not a question for the man to ask. And yet the solution is the woman needs to work more. Why don't we push the men to work less instead of, we always assume, well, the woman can't stay at home, she has to go to work. Why don't we assume that the man needs to go home and spend more time at home?
Well, what's funny, and this is just my experience. My husband had a very serious conversation with me and said, if we're moving to New York and you're going to continue working with the Today Show and keep doing this stuff, then I can stay at home. It called me old fashioned, but I could only relate it back to my experience with my own mom and how much I loved having her there and how much I loved having my mother at home with me and caring about me and doing things with me. And I just wanted that. I just wanted that with my kids. And I knew that if I was making this decision to have children, then I also wanted to be the one not solely responsible, but mainly responsible for raising them. And it wasn't really in my nature in the beginning, but you're right. There are so many times when women feel like we have to take it on because we are women. I am definitely seeing a huge shift in that, at least with the circles that I run in. I see so many moms who have dads who are just kicking butt, and who are, I can speak with my husband. He changes just as many diapers as I do. And he, wakes up with the kids as much as I do and probably more. And there is
we'll
definitely
edit that out
a
so he doesn't hear it. We don't want him to have any unnecessary leverage.
There's definitely, I've seen a shift. And I don't know if it is just in my career. You guys tell me if I'm wrong, but golly, it just seems like the guys are stepping up so much. And it really is cool. And I feel lucky to be a mom at this time when I have a partner who is down to help me with the kids as much as anyone. I feel so lucky in that way. And I just feel so supported by someone who really thinks that like this parenting thing is a it takes two. Yeah, and some days we do great and some days we don't. I do feel like there was a bit of societal pressure of like, oh, I've got to be the mom, I've got to let go of my career. But that was just tiny. That was tiny in comparison to my desire, my true desire to like really be a mother and to not miss out on the first walks and the first words and the first role. I just ached for that. And I ached to be part of those moments.
One other question I have about the news industry is we've seen a lot of the news industry shaken up over the past few years because of the Me Too movement and things coming to light that 10, 20, 30 years ago, it just would have been unthinkable. These things would have stayed hidden even though they were going on. Do you think that overall the Me Too movement has helped the news industry or hurt it or been a neutral factor? Or have you seen any of this firsthand?
I haven't seen any of it firsthand, thankfully, but I can only, in my industry, I think it has done nothing but helped because women especially feel empowered to not just, they feel empowered to share their stories and to share what's happening to them or to fight for more. I mean, because we deserve it. In my industry, a lot of times the men would get paid way more than the women would get paid for doing the exact same job. And when I first got into this industry, that was just like, it's a bummer. But, there's more women who want this job than men. So, they're just going to get paid less.
You could justify it all day if you need to.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And at first I was kind of like, oh, well, this is just the way it goes. And yeah, my counterpart's making a couple thousand more than I am, but I just have to just go with it because there's 16 girls here at this station who want my job. So just be thankful for what you have. After the Me Too movement, it's no longer okay. Like it really isn't okay that this guy who does the exact same job as I do gets paid more than me. That's not an okay thing because I know that I'm valuable. And what I think is one of the biggest things that I took away from the Me Too movement was to not settle and to not rationalize things that were happening to me that shouldn't be happening, like getting paid less than my counterpart. Me Too movement made me realize how important it was to understand and to know your value and to fight for what you know you're worth. Like if you're really doing the work and you have proof of the work that you're doing and you're showing up and you're working hard, then my goodness, you march into that boss's office and you tell him what you're worth. And don't be afraid of that. A lot of times I feel like I've been so nice to other people in this industry because I felt like I've had to, and sometimes saying yes to things that I didn't want to say yes to and not standing up for myself because I thought, oh, I don't want to come off mean or I don't want to come off, harsh. I want everyone to like me because it's all about ratings and being liked by viewers. But at the end of the day, you got to know your worth and you have to know your value and you have to know that that's really important and that's something that's worth fighting for. Those are the things that I have noticed that have come as a positive from the Me Too movement, especially in my industry. Oh, here's number 3.
Come on, number 3, get in on this.
Here she is. Hey, Edie. Husband is the one that's holding her. Here, you can grab her.
You have seen over the years these different news cycles, these highs and lows, maybe probably never big lulls in any sort of news cycles, but some lulls where there's maybe not quite as many huge topics on the line at all times. Right now, it seems like there's so many absolute game-changing pieces of news that are out there at all times. And you would say you're at like this climactic, hopefully getting close to some sort of climactic moment of like this insane news time. I mean, seeing that go up and down and up and down, does that give you perspective or does that give you hope for a year from now or 2 years from now, having seen this kind of play out multiple times? Or do you really feel like, no, we're at a place right now that we've never been before and we're screwed? Or do you feel like, no, I definitely can see a light at the end of the tunnel. I see some hope down the road.
I mean, I'm always going to be the forever optimist and always hope that things are going to level out at some point. I'm so hopeful of that, because that's literally, as a mother with kids who can't go to school, that's like, I need it. I need to have that hope. This by far, and again, I've been in the news industry for over a decade, is the craziest time for news. Also the worst time to be in news, because fake news has never been so prevalent ever. But I am so hopeful that in the next year, 2021 is our year, you guys, it's going to be great, that things will level off and that we will have, I'm just praying for some bit of normalcy and some going back to seeing more positive stories on the news and seeing more stories that fill people with hope and with senses of community. I mean, I'm always going to be that kind of a person, just because I think that to get lost in the day-to-day and in the muck of crazy stuff that's happening, because you can find it if you really want to. Like, you can sit online and you can find insane stories of things that really, you know, make the world not seem so great. I am extremely hopeful that we are at a point where, especially ahead of this election, which to many people is the most important election of their lifetime, like Josh said, I am hopeful that, you know, after Christmas, things will level off. Like, I can't wait for Christmas. Christmas lights, you know, can't we just be smiling and happy by then? Yes.
Yeah, 2020 Christmas is good for so many reasons.
Totally.
I appreciate that. And it gives me hope to hear you say that, because from an expert. What are some of the greatest lessons that you've learned from making this decision to dedicate your time full time to motherhood? I believe you have 3 kids and 1 on the way, another boy.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yep, another boy.
I saw the blue come out of the thing when it popped on you.
That's right.
So what are some of the greatest lessons that you've learned as part of that process of going into full-time motherhood and leaving a career, not completely, but very much behind you a little bit?
The biggest and best lesson was knowing the difference and seeing the difference between what I thought was happiness and what is true joy. Like, I thought the world told me that my life couldn't get any better. You know, I was going to the biggest events on the planet, the Olympics, the Golden Globes, behind the scenes of some of the biggest shows on television. I was interviewing stars that were complete A-listers. I mean, Jimmy Fallon at the end of, you know, his Golden Globes debut, and Adam Levine and Martha Stewart and Jay Leno. I was interviewing the biggest and best people ever. And I thought that I was super happy. Like, this is so cool. This is so amazing. How could I ever let this go? That's what made making that decision so scary. But after putting a pause on my career and being a full-time mom, the world no longer told me I was cool. Like, I was not cool anymore. I was not interviewing these big stars. I was not on location, you know, in London or in Russia. I was at home changing diapers. But to compare the two experiences is almost impossible. I thought I was really happy doing all of these great big things that the world told me, my gosh, you're so lucky to be part of. But that feeling of welcoming a new baby into the world, that feeling of holding them for the first time, that feeling of getting up in the middle of the night and seeing something that you created with the person that you love more than anything, like finding out you're pregnant, having children, seeing their first, that's not happiness. That is true, incredible, earth-shaking joy that I never knew was possible. I didn't know I could be happier than what I was, you know, interviewing, Russell Brand, Jon Stewart. I didn't know that it could be better than that. I thought that was just so cool. And then came kids, and then came being a mom, and it wasn't happy. It was joy, finding what I truly felt like I was on this earth to do. And that was to bring these children down and hopefully raise them to be, you know, somewhat decent human beings. the best way I could. Yeah.
One day that little girl next to you is going to listen to that and be incredibly grateful to hear that. Right now she's just sitting there sucking her thumb, wondering what mom's doing. But one day she's going to listen back to that.
My sweet bee.
It's forever recorded. Emma, I mean, we need to meet up sometime. We're close. I'm in Gilbert on the other side of the 60, but it's close enough. It really is it's a pleasure to meet you. And seriously, I think your story is one that's inspiring and impactful. And I love that you have this foundational expertise that a career gave you, but then you can kind of juxtapose that with motherhood and being this whole different part of your life, which is so incredible. So thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us today and talking to us.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Where is the best place that people can find you? So right now you're really working on the MOMCAST, and that's Emma Jade TV on Instagram, right? Is there anywhere else that you're kind of posting content that people can keep an eye out?
That's the best place right now. We're in the middle of, I am in the middle of building a website.
The team.
And at some point, I will have that done, hopefully before baby number 4 comes in January. But yes, that would be the best place. And I think, it's important to note that I really don't. There's some days where I feel like I got a handle on this stuff. There's other days where I feel like I don't. And sometimes MOMCAST can be really great. Others it's not. But we're trying and we're building and we're doing this because I know that there's so many other women and men out there like me who just want to know what's happening. So hopefully this little venture can mean something to someone.
Love it. Josh, you got anything else to add before we wrap it up?
No, just thank you so much, Emma. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and get this insight into your life and the news industry and all this stuff.
Yeah. Awesome, you guys. Okay, so much fun. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon. Thank you, Emma.
Sounds good. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Hello, it's Corey here, and I just want to thank you so much for listening into the Hope Strategy Podcast. I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are enjoying having these amazing conversations with these incredible individuals talking about hope. We'd love it if you wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, and leaving us a review on iTunes or Spotify or anywhere that you listen to your podcasts, and share it with anybody you feel that can benefit from these messages of hope. Thank you so much for listening to the Hope Strategy Podcast.